Hello, everybody. Happy
Hi
Friday.
guys.
Hi everyone. Bonjour à tous. Goedendag, maybe I might add.
Buenas tardes. I don't know. Konnichiwa.
Look at you guys with all the languages.
So, welcome again to LangFest Lunch. Today, our guest is Lukas Van Vyve.
Hi
Is
guys.
that how I pronounce it? Van Vyve or Van Vive?
In Dutch we would say Van Vyve.
Van Vive. There you go.
Yeah.
But
So usually in English I would say Van Vyve or Van Vyve. Doesn't really matter actually. Thank God my first name is easy to pronounce in every language.
there you go. There you go. So Lukas was a presenter at LangFest 18. So just couple months ago, about six,
Yeah.
7 months ago, at our last edition, and he gave a very, very interesting talk about chunking method, his unique method. So, we'll be hearing about that a little later in today's interview. But first of all, who is Lukas? For those of us who've never heard of Lukas Van Vyve.
Yes. First of all, thank you for having me here, and thanks for having me last year as well at the at LangFest. We had a lot of fun there.
There you go.
Made a lot of good friends, and it was fun presenting there. Yeah. So, I am Lucas, like that's already said, from Belgium. A multilingual country, for those of you who know it.
That's
I think
right.
many of you know it, right? So in Belgium we speak French, Dutch, a little bit of German as well in a small part. It's not really mixed in that. I mean, I wouldn't really speak French when I grew up. I grew up in the Flemish-speaking part in Antwerp. We wouldn't really do that, but still, you hear the language around you, like when you go to Brussels or whatever. I've always been interested in learning languages as well as a kid already. I think actually when I was 10 years old, I told my mom I wanted to be an interpreter.
Oh, wow! I told my
But
mom I
not a
want to be a truck
firefighter or
driver.
anything. Yeah, a truck driver, a pilot, firefighter. I told my mom I want to be an interpreter. And
Wow.
actually did. Yeah, so I learned languages like during high school and everything, but not that much. But then afterwards, I studied applied linguistics at university, so translation, interpretation, German, English, and Dutch,
Uh,
which was a lot of fun.
Well, that's
Yeah,
quite amazing. I mean, we have many guests who come up and say, I've only spoken English until I was 20, or
yeah,
and suddenly got bitten by the language bug, and so it's not always that we have somebody who's in your case you've really been raised in that situation, and also
yeah,
you were passionate about it. No, it's not everybody who's
yeah,
raised in a multilingual situation who's also passionate about languages.
yeah, exactly.
So it's really where you've got
When it
all the
comes
right
together.
ingredients that come together.
Yeah, and it's funny because my dad was raised bilingually, French, Dutch. My mom is a French teacher, but she's actually, I mean, she was raised Dutch, but they didn't want to raise us, like me and my two sisters, bilingually. So we only were raised in Dutch, but we still had the exposure at school and everything, of course, right? But it was not that we were raised bilingually, but at the same time, we had so much exposure to it. So it's like, it's a bit weird, you know? A lot of people in Belgium actually don't like languages. They would learn because we have to learn French at school, of course.
Okay.
They don't like it. It's one of the least favorite subjects of most students, actually. Not for me. I like learning languages. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, so I was happy I could study at university as well.
Wow.
But I think, anyways, you come from a country that I think we get the same kind of feeling here. Language is very political in Belgium. I'd say
Yeah,
since I'm interested in language politics, and I know the language situation of Belgium a little bit. I'd say even more than in Quebec. It's even more.
yeah, it's
Really?
Yeah.
Wow,
yeah,
I thought
it's
this place was hard to beat.
Yeah, but no. I mean, but every multi-language country has language politics attached to it. It comes with the multilingualism.
absolutely.
It's always the case.
It's pretty intense. Yeah, governments fall over that. So it's yeah, it's intense.
So
But good, yeah.
so you said at around 10 you really started to get interested, and then I mean there's that you talk about university, but what about high school? There's
Yeah.
some
So
projects specific to languages that you were doing during your
you know,
teens, and
um, so we start learning languages in Belgium at school at the age of 10, or at least in my time it was like that. So at the age of 10, you start having French classes, which I liked a lot. I did a little bit like afterwards, I was like everyone in Belgium, we watch a lot of English shows, of course, TV shows, all with subtitles, so that makes it easier to learn that. We did some German at school. I tried to learn some Spanish as well by myself, but it wasn't that much that I was like taking a lot of like action on it, like on a personal level. It was more like I would enjoy the language subjects a lot at school. I would enjoy writing. I would enjoy, learning more than we actually had to learn about the languages that we were taught, but not that I would be like learning by myself all the time. So I wasn't like this crazy polyglot like you have some of these, Alex Rawlings, or what's his name again, Timothy
Donor.
Donor, yeah, exactly.
Donor.
Who learned so many languages and be at home studying them all the time. I didn't really do that, but I was just very interested in learning languages and in becoming an interpreter. But I took my time. I was like, okay, first I finished high school, and I finished at the age of 18 in Belgium, and then I go to university and start like learning how to become an interpreter. So that's more like how it went.
So, how long did you work as an interpreter? Did you actually work for a while as an interpreter?
I didn't really work as an interpreter. I worked as a translator. I still do sometimes, some projects, not that often anymore. I do more like the language education stuff nowadays. Yeah, I didn't because, for several reasons actually, which is also the reason why I started the language education company. Because at university, when I was actually studying there, I got super frustrated. Because we were learning languages like most people learn languages there, which is not necessarily bad. And I was studying applied linguistics, so it was normal that we were using a traditional approach. But we were just like the first year I remember we had like a book of, you've always seen these books of vocabulary, just word lists, like 400, 500 pages. They would just tell us, okay, learn these like 2,000 words by heart. At the end of the semester, you have an exam, just give us 100 words. They will give them in Dutch, and we have to translate them into German, and you pass or you fail if you have like 80% right, something like that. Pretty difficult, but you learn the words, which is good, and then you learn all the grammar rules. Like I think I knew more about German grammar than than native speakers probably, because we learned all of that. But then we still couldn't speak at all, so we learned so many words, so much grammar. Just couldn't speak. Like whenever I tried to speak, it was like super clumsy, and then we were thinking about all, I don't know if you guys learned German. The rules, and then which case ending do I need to use here, and what's the declension here? It just doesn't work, and it's super frustrating, especially because you go after 3 years, you go into that interpretation training, and you're there, and you need to speak, and you still feel like I can't say anything, right? And that was super frustrating. Yeah, so I didn't really start working as an interpreter afterwards. What I did learn, though, from my interpretation teacher was that, he said like in the last year, so after 3 years of struggling that much, he told us, and this is actually what like the whole chunking method is about, if I can go into that a little bit already, because it's actually very much linked to like the last year of my interpretation studies, was that he said like, you don't have to invent the language that much, and you don't have to like just say something and then hope it's grammatically correct, and that's what like sounds natural. You can actually listen to native speakers, right? He would always ask us like, is that what a German native speaker would say? Is that what he would say, or is this just something that you translated in your head and that they might understand, but they would never say it themselves, right? And that was such an insight that's so logical, right? So obvious if you hear it, but still so many people don't think about it that way. They're still learning the words, the grammar rules. They want to understand all the grammar before they say something. But you could actually just listen to native speakers and just listen, like, what do they say? Like, how would they say something? And if you hear something that you would like to be able to say as well, you can just start using the same word combinations, the same phrases that they're using.
Yeah, I watched, I watched your presentation, and everything just, clicked. It just sounded so logical.
Yeah, it sounds so logical.
So simple. Yet it's just not the way it's taught. And
no, it's really weird.
The fact that you have a few words together as a chunk, automatically gives you some context of how that word is used, which is not possible when you learn, just the words. So yeah, maybe you want to, develop a little more on your technique. How you came up with it, really specifically, and how you've developed it. I suppose you have a course. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I got that insight like when I was like in my last year at university a couple of years ago, didn't really get the method yet, but I was more like, okay, actually I should listen more, and I shouldn't learn like all these words. I should learn, like chunks or word combinations or sentences, and then I will just say the same thing, because then I won't have to worry anymore if I sound like weird or clumsy. I don't have to think about grammar anymore, because I learn like full word combinations. After that, I actually went abroad to Nice to study a master in international politics. So I wasn't really into like the language education stuff that much yet. I was thinking of maybe doing some diplomacy stuff or whatever, which was fun. It was a trilingual master's. So we had courses, subjects taught in French or in German or in English, which is pretty cool. It was a preparation for the EU, so we had to learn a lot of languages. After that, I moved to Italy because I wanted to learn Italian. And that's when I started my business. And that's actually, I thought, okay, now I'm going to try to learn a language from scratch with this method, right? And
how many years ago was this?
That was 3 years ago, I think.
Oh, wow.
2016,
oh, wow.
or 2.5.
Really recent.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty recent. Yeah, exactly. Not that long ago. So I knew some French, I knew some Spanish. A lot of French and a little bit of Spanish at the time, but I didn't know any Italian. So I moved there, bought an Assimil book because I thought, well, they have conversations, I like that method. I can just like use that and maybe see if I can, learn with the Assimil method, with like the thoughts I had about language learning, which wasn't really developed into a method yet. So I did that. So I bought the Assimil book, used Assimil, and I really started to learn like only that. So I made flashcards, went through a dialogue, just would make flashcards, would put a full sentence on there, and I would blank out the chunk that I wanted to learn.
Okay.
So if in the beginning it was something like mi chiamo Lucas or something, I would just like, ciao, mi chiamo Lucas, write that down, then blank out mi chiamo, and then just start saying that. Wow. I remember in the first lesson, there was also something like, vorrei parlare con il signore, I don't know, Tetsuyum or something like that. Like, I would like to speak with someone. And that's actually a very difficult construction to have in the first lesson, right? That's like, I would like to speak, like conditional, subjunctive, whatever. No, not subjunctive, but conditional. So I would like write that down as well. And I thought, well, it doesn't matter that I can't say it in any other situation.
So really the grammar itself is kind of irrelevant at this point in time.
It's totally irrelevant. And you would think,
what do you want to say? What do you want to learn?
It's frequency too, it's like if it's something that comes up a lot and you don't need the other tenses or the other contractions. If that's 80% or 90% of it, then you can start with that, even if it's deemed complicated, because it's something that you're going to be saying all the time.
Exactly. And it doesn't matter. And you would think it's only relevant at the beginning, but it's almost always irrelevant. Like, because how often are you going to say, vorresti parlare? Would you like to speak to? You don't say that often. Like, especially in the beginning, you're talking about yourself. I want to speak to someone, right? And so it never comes up. So why would you have to learn all these other things? So that was another insight I got, like, okay, you don't need the grammar that much. It's still useful to know the grammar.
So something that you said, I feel is so, it really, feels right to me, is when you say, when you learn these chunks or when you learn these, phrases from natives, it sounds right. At the beginning, when you start from zero, you don't know what sounds right or what doesn't sound right. But once you incorporate that with these chunks, then every time you hear something that's kind of off from that, you feel it. You sort of feel the grammar, and that's how people learn naturally. I mean, kids, that's exactly how they learn. They say some crazy stuff, but just by repeating every day, and you sort of correct them every once in a while, it becomes right, and then it just sort of feels wrong when you hear something that's wrong. And like you said, I can't explain half of the stuff that that feels right to me, but I don't know how to explain it grammatically. So it's exactly, you're really onto something here. I think that's gold.
And what I like so much about it is that it's so logical. Like, there's nobody I've ever taught this to or told this to that they were like, oh no, that's not correct. They might say, well, I want the grammar rules because it gives me like confidence and peace of mind that I know them, which I understand, and it's useful to know them, because at a certain point you will have to improvise a little bit. You can't learn or like know all chunks in a language, so sometimes you'll have to improvise, like make yourself understood, maybe make mistakes. But it's so logical, and it takes away so much of like the insecurities you have when speaking a language. Like, do I sound stupid? Do I sound like an idiot? Is this wrong, or is this something a native speaker would say? And that's what I like so much about it.
So the basics, as I understand it, is that you take out all these idioms or this high frequency chunks of phrases that come up all the time. So my question is, how many of them do you suggest that a learner should learn? Because say you have 100 words which are the most frequent in a language, and you can imagine that those words are going to come up in various constructions. But if you combine, I mean, not all the words will combine, but there will be many frequent chunks as well. Absolutely. I mean, does that make it worse? Does that make it better? Is it the same in terms of workload, you feel?
I feel it's the same in terms of workload, because it would, like, for example, if you would learn language with Asumil, for example, or with the courses that we create now, we also do dialogues. It's still the same amount of work, the same number of lessons, the same number of words in the dialogue. It's just a different way of approaching it. And I think actually when you start learning a language, it's still useful to learn the 200 most frequent words or the 300 most frequent words. Because it gives you such a head start in comprehension. And then once you know these, like, understanding a dialogue just becomes so much easier. So that's so that's what I would do in the beginning. But then afterwards, you just need, it's true that you need a lot of input if you use this method. And I think you could probably be faster in making yourself understood in a language if you just learn a lot of words and then some grammar rules, because you can probably make some sentences that are more or less correct. But if you want to speak it fluently, and if you want to speak naturally, and you want to sound good in the language, you just need so much input and listen and listen and listen until you absorb them either subconsciously and also consciously. But you don't need to learn them all like by heart with flashcards, of course. If you just listen a lot and you really try to listen to how they, like, native speakers say things, just doing that and being aware of that, you will often feel like you would really have that feeling of like, oh, okay, so that's how you would say it. And once you do that, often it's enough to just remember it. And like Tetsu says, after a while, you get a feel for it. You know what sounds right. You know what doesn't sound right, just like you do in your mother tongue, right? So of course it's a lot of work, but like with any method for learning a language, it's a lot of work. But it helps a lot, I think, with speaking. It's like a more direct link with between like what you read and hear and how you speak if you learn these things. Because then you don't have to worry that much about the grammar rules. You just use these chunks automatically, right? So I feel there's a more direct link than if you would learn the words. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna put in a lot of effort, you might as well put in a lot of effort where it's effective, right? Everybody works hard, but if you don't work smart, don't get to the results quite as fast.
That's true.
So, in this method, I mean, do you now that you're very well known in the polyglot community, do you have allies? I mean, do you have folks that who share this method or who are also promoting this method or do something similar?
I think not everyone like teaches it this way, but I think all successful polyglots actually do this subconsciously.
Okay.
All of them, even if they don't know it.
Oh wow! Okay, all of them. Well, that's a bold statement.
Even if they don't know it.
Okay.
I really know that, because I think if you speak, like if you hear people who are so good at foreign language and you think they sound so natural, they must have observed, because you can't learn these things from grammar. Like the example of that I gave in the talk as well. For example, in English, if you can say Merry Christmas, right? And in some parts of the world, you can say Happy Christmas, right? I don't know if you say that in Canada, but I know you can. You would say Happy Birthday, but you can't say Merry Birthday, right? If I would say Merry Birthday to you, it sounds so weird. But it's like, if you think about it, it's grammatically, it's correct.
That's right.
If you look at the meaning of the words, it's correct, right? I mean, Merry, you could probably say.
Why not? Yeah, definitely.
But it's just not what people say. It's not a pattern, it's not a chunk, and you can't know that without being exposed to the language. You can't know that from words and grammar rules. So I think people who speak the language really, really well, they do this automatically. They're just really perceptive, they're really good at like hearing how to say stuff, what not to say, and they would just like copy that and start saying the same things. And even from like when they're at the low level, they would still use these very natural chunks, and then they would sound really good even if they're not that good at the language yet. We see the same in language courses we do. If you learn with this method, in the beginning you'll sound very good, like on certain topics, but not on everything, because you don't know that many chunks yet.
Right,
But you would still sound like people would be impressed with you, like, oh, how do you know that? How do you know that you should say that? Or that sounds really good. So there are people who do this subconsciously, I think. most of the really good language learners do. I've worked with Anja Sommer, who was also Anja Winter, I think her name on she has like different names on Facebook.
The real name is Winter, yeah.
Anja Winter is her name. Yeah, so she made like some jokes about that.
Yeah, that's right.
So I met her.
She's that kind of a girl.
Yeah. But,
she's just a fun girl. Yeah. So you
exactly.
met her at LangFest for the first time?
Yeah, I met her at LangFest for the first time.
Nice.
And we actually launched a German course together.
There you go. That's fantastic. People ask us, well, what is LangFest for? And this is one of the reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
It's for participants to have a physical place to meet. It's also for people to share ideas, and then something, it sparks stuff.
Exactly.
And lots of people met at the LangFest for the first time. I mean, Steve Kaufman and Benny met at LangFest for the first time. Yeah. So this is.
That's true. Yeah, you can totally meet a lot of people there.
Yeah.
If you're like in language, in language business yourself, you can meet people. But also if you're just like interested in languages, it's so nice.
Exactly. So,
which other language events have you been to?
I have been to the Polyglot Conference in Greece, in Thessaloniki, and in Iceland, and I've been to the Polyglot Gathering once in Bratislava.
Oh, okay. Which year? Because I went last year in 2017.
I went in 2017, not in 2018. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't think we met, maybe in passing, but there's so many people. There's so many people that I didn't meet.
That's right.
I think even last year at LangFest, we only met very briefly. There's some people that it's just so busy running around that are like, oh, it's just impossible to get acquainted with everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of people there.
I was in Reykjavik. I gave a presentation in Reykjavik actually. Yeah.
Was it about? I don't know if I saw it. It was about raising your children.
Correct.
Bilingually or quadrilingually, whatever you're doing.
Yeah, he's doing
five languages. But the topic was, not just raising. We were at a polyglot conference, so it was mostly about multilingual education. But at the same time, this same idea applies to other talents. So it was my title, I think, was something along raising multilingual or educating multilingual children as a complete package for raising multi-talented kids, or something along those lines. I can't remember the topics, the titles of my talks anymore.
But, I see. Was it so? Because you're raising your children like in a lot of languages, right? I'm interested. I assume you don't teach them that much grammar either. Right?
Zero.
So you talk to them only, or how exactly do you?
Well, it's we basically have one single method with respect to languages. It's called OPAL, so one person, one language. So so it's really just assigning a language to one person.
And then they speak it always with that person.
Yeah. So they switch naturally. It's just their living circumstances. So there's nothing's forced in. Everything that they like to do, that they love to do, will be done in a specific language that's related to the person that's providing that thing that they like to do, and that's it. That's it. I mean, I have 3 kids. One really likes to read a lot, so we have books in all these 5 languages. Depending on who's reading, it'll be that language. They speak Mandarin with me, Japanese with mom, French at school. We have an au pair who from Mexico who will speak Spanish to them all the time. We've also hired au pairs for English, depending on the times. Those are the 5 languages.
Yeah, they're probably learning chunks as well, right?
Definitely. I mean, definitely. I think like you say, the real good language learners, which children are in that category, I think. They all consciously or subconsciously learn through the chunking method or any derivative thereof. I mean, yourself, you've came up with this method. What languages have you learned, consciously using this method?
So I've only learned Italian from scratch consciously with this method.
There you go.
Which worked extremely well. Yeah. Maybe also because I had some background. I didn't need that much work on the grammar because I knew French and Spanish and Latin, so then that makes it easier. but that worked so well. It was so easy from the beginning. I could say so many things. And of course, I was in Italy, so I got a lot of exposure. That made it easier as well. But what it also works well for is if you learn a language like in traditional way, and you want to like refine that, and you want to really like start speaking it naturally and fluently, and maybe it works even better. So I did that for German. I did that for, well, I'm doing it for Spanish right now, actually. I did that for French even. I would go back through like beginner dialogues, even beginner courses, and look for chunks. So look for everything where I thought like, okay, so I understand this, because you understand most of it, but I couldn't say myself that way. I wasn't able to say myself that way because I didn't know that was the correct way of saying it. And you see so many things there. And if you do that, you learn a lot from that.
Well, there you go.
Like refining, you know, not speaking, like not that you can't speak yet, but just refining it and sounding more natural. Yeah, so I've done that for almost all the languages that I've learned. Just go back through the beginner dialogues, or just like
which are now you've got what, 5, 6?
Yeah, so Dutch is my mother tongue. Yep. Then there's French, English is probably my best one. Then German, Italian, you know, some Spanish. I'm working on my Spanish right now.
So,
yeah.
Any thoughts about, you know, going, you know, off your you know, alphabet-based languages, you know, Arabic, or I don't know, Hebrew, Russian, or even Asian languages?
Yeah, I've been thinking about learning Mandarin. So I started a little bit.
There you go.
I did like a little bit of Asimil Mandarin, like, and 10 of the first lessons. Felt like, at least for the beginning, like chunking worked extremely well, because there's basically no grammar, right?
Yeah.
It was even easier. You just need to learn the patterns. So it's like, well, this is like the perfect language to try this with. Yeah, so I think I will. I'm here now, like in LA, so close to Mexico. I was in Mexico before. I came here, so that's why I'm working on my Spanish now. But I think this year, or at least my next language, will probably be Mandarin, unless something else comes up I have to learn.
Nice.
It'll probably be Mandarin, yeah. Let's see how it goes.
Very good. All right. We are approaching the end of this very interesting talk. I mean, we could go on for hours, but we always have to ask our guests this key question about what's in the near term or mid to long term. What's in the works for Lukas going forward?
Okay, so for the language stuff, let's start with that one, because it's probably what you guys are interested in. I'm working a lot. So I launched last year. I launched courses for German, French, Spanish, and Italian already. 3-month courses. Wow. We call them the 12 and 12 challenges.
Oh,
just, you know, a 12-week program.
Yeah.
So it's a 12-week program based on dialogues, based on this chunking method. What we do is we give students 4 to 5 minute native speaker dialogues a week. And then we do that for 12 weeks. So on 12 different topics with a lot of grammar and stuff as well. And everything included to learn with the chunking method and learn how to use it and everything. Yeah, the German one is the biggest one right now, because I did it with Anya a couple of times. She has a big audience. So we had hundreds of students in that one, which was a lot of fun to do that. I'm working a lot on the Spanish one right now. Okay. And in April, at the end of April, I'll probably start with a Spanish 12 and 12 challenge again. So that's the next big goal, like working on the Spanish course, helping people with Spanish, and then probably other languages as well. Last year I launched a book. Actually, I have my book here.
Yeah.
I talk about that on LangFest. You can find that on Amazon, so if you're interested in the method.
Fantastic. You could comment in the
oh yeah, I will do that
in the video, and then, or when you share it, just put it in the link for our folks.
See, it's not a long book, but it's just a short guide. There's extra resources on the website as well that come with it if you're interested in learning more about that. So that's in the works. I don't know where I will be, and so I'll be here in LA for the coming months. Afterwards, I don't know yet where I'll go. Maybe back to Mexico, maybe back to Belgium.
Well, definitely do come by Montreal.
I might.
In
August, right?
That's right.
It's in August again. Yeah,
August 23rd to 25th.
Yeah, perfect. I had a lot of fun last year, so I'll try to be there again this year. So that's medium-term, short-term, future. That's what I'm working on right now. It allows me to travel, so that's a lot of fun as well.
We have Carol Todd on our YouTube right now watching, and she said, you know, super interesting talk that we have today. Well, thank you, Carol. And she said she missed Lukas' presentation at LangFest. Well, it is on our Facebook page and also on our YouTube channel. So the recording is is there for everybody to check it out, and I definitely recommend everybody to check it out. It's a very interesting talk.
Yes.
So, all right. So this week, we have Steven also who just chimed in on our YouTube. He loves your chunking language method. So thank you, Steven. I don't know if you're watching on our YouTube at the same time, but we've got Facebook and YouTube, running at the same time, and we've got folks.
Oh, you got it everywhere. Yeah, I just saw that.
That's right. It's LangFest at its technological best.
Yeah, wow.
It's fun. I'm trying to learn all these technology things right now, and
right. So many things are possible nowadays.
That's right. I mean, I was going to ask you. I mean, we only have about 2 minutes, but I'm just squeeze in this little question. So you were talking about your course, this 12 plus 12 course. Is this like a series of videos that you passively just put on there, or you actually teaching? You're taking.
What we do is a combination. So I call it like guided self-study.
All right.
So we give students the dialogues, which are pre-recorded, which come with like a transcript, parallel translate, everything included, like everything you need to make the most out of these dialogues. Learn the chunks, learn all what there is to learn about them. Combined with that, we have a community. With on Slack, so you can ask questions there to tutors in Spanish as well, or the languages that you're learning. You can ask us questions. We post resources there. We do live sessions every week, like this one, more or less.
There you go. See,
where you can ask questions, where you can come on screen, you can talk with us.
Wow,
so it's all included.
That's fantastic.
It's everything.
That's fantastic. Well, definitely put put the link to your course, to your books. Put it on when you share it. We'll also copy that and share it on our side. So thank you, Lukas, for taking the time.
Thank you guys for having me.
You're busy running around, but best of luck and everything. All your projects
in Montreal.
You bet. I'm gonna take your word for it.
Okay.
Next week, everybody. Bye bye.
See you guys. Thank you for listening.
Bye.